And welcome back to another edition of the I Prefer the 80s and 90s Sports Podcast. A podcast or editorial or rant where I, Richard Harris Jr., talk about the world of sports and why I love the sports of the 80s and 90s over today. I tell people this all the time about me, that to me, New Year's Day is not January 1st. Even though on the calendar it says it's January 1st. But to me, New Year's Day is September 1st. And you say, why? I say September 1st because September 1st usually is the day, usually starts the month of my favorite part of the year, which is the fall. It's the end of the baseball season. It's the start of the football season, U.S. Open tennis, Ryder Cup golf, or President's Cup golf, or Solheim Cup golf. There's always something. College football, and then October comes along, which is like technically February, and you got college football, basketball, NBA, Major League Baseball. You have it all. And usually in September, there's a boxing championship, there's an MMA championship, there's teams are fighting for NASCAR championship. It's the crowning month of the year, other than Enero, otherwise known as Janvier, and otherwise known as January. So that's why I like September 1st. And one of the things about September 1st time of year is the U.S. Open tennis. I love tennis. I ain't got no shame in that. I like to watch the matches. I like to watch both the men's and women's. My ex-wife thinks I used to watch the women's because I wanted to hear the grunts and I wanted to hear, see the pretty girls in their little short skirts and stuff like that, and not really care about tennis. Well, sorry, Mel, you're wrong on that front. I watched the sport because I taught it, played it a little bit, understand it, respect it, and can talk about it. Last night, Gael Monflis, French player, played a match. And I put out a Facebook statement where I said, he is the face of this generation of sports. Because no matter if Gael Monfils wins or loses, everybody's happy. Remember that movie Life is Good? That Italian guy who won the best actor, and he used to climb up on the chair and do his little dance, and everyone for the first 50 times thought it was cute, and so on and so forth. That's the feeling you get when you watch Monfils play. Because, number one, and most importantly, you don't care if he wins. You just want to see him out there jumping for balls, diving for balls, doing things that he does that makes the game so exciting. And then a friend of mine chimed in saying that it's like Nick Kyrgios. And I'm like, no. Kyrgios has the ammunition to win. You watch Kyrgios because you want to see if he's going to go nuts on somebody. But you also watch Kyrgios because he can play. Monfils can play. But Kyrgios has beaten Federer, Djokovic, and Nadal, made them so mad afterwards that like in the post-game conference, they were like, this guy could be number one player in the world if he played. If he just took tennis seriously and stopped the shenanigans. But Monfils is just that guy who You just go to watch him play because he's fun to watch. It's an event. And we don't care if he wins or loses. Now you say, is he a unicorn in that regard? Is he like one of a kind in that regard? In this era, yeah, he is. But in the 80s and 90s, more in particular in the 90s, there was another French player, Yannick Noah, that we all loved to watch. And when he won that French Open for the French people, and the celebration was unbelievable, and blah 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 and blah blah blah, he became monfils because for the rest of Yannick Noah's tennis life, nobody cared if he won or lost. He was must-see TV because he was the guy who was doing the daring shots, the between the leg shots, the athletic tennis player. And the ladies liked him because he was nice to look at with his braids. But Yannick was that guy that no matter what happened, if he lost, if he won, we were all happy that he simply played. And that's the same thing with Monfils. But obviously the difference between Monfils and Yannick Noah is Monfils never won a major, never had that crowning king moment that Noah had. Now you say, you sound like you like both, in both eras. I do. But the difference between Yannick and Monfils is because Yannick won that French Open, he's royalty. And he was a first. I mean, we know Arthur Ashe was the first black man to do the things, and he became a celebrated guy over the years. But there was a difference between Yannick and Arthur Ashe. Arthur Ashe was graceful, he was regal, he was presidential, he was sophisticated. He played the tennis game like elegantly. Yannick wasn't elegant. Yannick was different because he was athletic. He did athletic things. Again, like I said before, he just played the game differently from the other black players of that time. Monfils, he plays a lot like Tiafoe, but Tiafoe is not as spectacular. Monfils is spectacular. And the announcers love him. The tennis fans love him. Just like they love Yannick. So am I saying it as a criticism of the 80s and 90s, but not a criticism? Excuse me. Am I saying it as a criticism in the 80s and 90s, or am I saying it not a criticism for today? And I guess in a lot of ways, I'm criticizing today and not criticizing it in the 80s and 90s. And the reason why I'm not criticizing it in the 80s and 90s is because Yannick earned the right to be celebrated. He did the unthinkable. When you play tennis, when you play golf, when you box, whatever, and you feel like you are carrying the weight of the world, your country on your back, and you go and win your country's national championship, that is world championship, that is special in the championship, you get a little bit more of a pass and you're more of a lovable, respected figure than when you don't win anything and people just like you because you're a nice guy, because you're a fun guy. And that's what Monfils is. Yannick Noah, no. Yannick Noah was royalty after he won. And so when I watch golf and the guy from England a couple of years ago won the British Open in his home country of Northern Ireland, and the celebration, it means a lot to win in front of your own people. Andy Roddick winning the U.S. Open was enormous to him. Serena and Venus and Lindsay and Jennifer Capriati winning the U.S. Open in front of Sloane Stephens, winning the U.S. Open in America. It's a huge deal. Huge deal. Leighton Hewitt winning the Australian Open. Huge deal. Enormous deal. Tiger Woods winning the U.S. Open. Phil Mickelson trying to win the U.S. Open, still never did it. It's an enormous thing to have on your resume, to be the man or the woman to win your country's championship. And Yannick Noah at the time winning that French Open was absolutely unheard of. He wasn't even one of the 10. He was one of the 10 best players in the world, but he wasn't McEnroe, he wasn't Becker, he wasn't Edberg, he wasn't any of the guys that anyone expected to win, Lendl. And so doing it was extraordinary. And why is it a criticism today? It's a criticism today to me because I believe this era of sport embraces more people and things for participation, not for victory. As I said to you yesterday, whenever I'm telling the truth, my voice goes. I start choking on something. That's God's way of telling me to wrap it up because you're hitting a nerve and you're telling the truth. But it's a fact. Today, we celebrate the losers more than we celebrate the winners. Every day you turn on ESPN, they talk about the Cowboys who haven't won anything since 1995. They talk about LeBron. He hasn't won a championship in 3 years. You talk about Shohei Ohtani. They say he's the greatest baseball player ever to live. And the Angels are in 4th place. Way out of the playoffs, to the point where yesterday they released or put on waivers 7 players because they've thrown in the towel. But yet, people say that he's still going to win the MVP because he's the best player, but he's not on the best team. And his team ain't doing spit. We don't celebrate Michaela Schifrin, who sets world records and wins downhill skiing. We don't celebrate Katie Ledecky until the Olympics, even though during the year she wins other events. We don't celebrate the Denver Nuggets, who just won a championship in basketball. And so college football talk. All they talk about is Alabama. Georgia might get a little love somewhere, but every conversation is about Alabama. It's about Big Ten, Ohio State, and Michigan. And then, oh, by the way, the two-time defending champion is Georgia. That's the difference between today and the 80s and 90s. In the 80s and 90s, to the victors went the spoiler. Yes, they talked about Ken Griffey Jr. He never won anything. Yep, you are 100% correct. They talk about Barry Sanders. Yep, no question about it. He never won anything. But they were Hall of Fame, unreal talent. And when they disappeared, when their seasons was over, we ain't hear nothing about them. At the end of this baseball season, we are going to hear at least 10,000 stories about Shohei Ohtani and where he's going. Is it newsworthy? Somewhat. But the fact of the matter is, we're still going to hear about it. We still hear about the Dallas Cowboys. We know that they draw the biggest crowds in every sporting arena they play in. But so what? Ain't one spit. There hasn't been a man American tennis player to win the U.S. Open since 2003 when Andy Roddick did it. In fact, he's the last American male to win a major championship. And so we pat him on the back. We give him participation love. I don't like it. I want to see him win. I want to see Ohtani win. I want to see Monfils win. But he won't win because now he's 36, 37. It's Djokovic and Alcaraz's world with Sinner coming up, with Medvedev coming up. Monfils is good, but he don't do well. He's 0-17 lifetime against Djokovic. 0-13 or some crazy number, 0-19. We didn't praise Vitas Gerulaitis. May he rest in peace. When he made that wonderful, funny, hilarious statement when he finally beat Bjorn Borg and he said, nobody beats Vitas Gerulaitis 18 times in a row. I love Monfils. I'm so proud of him, happy that he and his wife, healthy child, he's back playing, she's back playing tennis. Hopefully they won't retire. Hopefully they will give us more joy. I want him to win something so that way he will enjoy the fruits of his labor like Yannick Noah did in his career.